Mighty, powerful, and massive, the giant is a terrifying and savage creature to encounter, with only the bravest of heroes or most cunning leaders able to outmatch this dangerous beast. With the likeness of a human being, the giant is an essentially human creature, capable of forming societies, building civilizations, and even going to war. However, the giant is different from human beings in one primary aspect: their size. At least twice the size of a normal human being, the giant is often reported as being 4 to 12 meters in stature, making even the most casual encounter quite intimidating. This size, combined with their somewhat violent and aggressive nature, sees the giant becoming quite threatening to average people. Indeed, such is the power of the giants that they are often employed by the gods themselves to achieve some divine end. However, that doesn't mean that the giants are completely servile to the gods. Many historical accounts have shown us that giants are more than willing to join battle with the divine, braving treacherous mountains and lethal beasts, all in an attempt to usurp the holy rulers of the world. As such, the giants are entirely capable of producing unique individuals, with famous heroes and villains, and even kings rising from among them. The size and power of the giant is derived from their ironically heavenly conception. Although the details vary from group to group, the giants of the world are usually the misbegotten children of various deities, although some are the result of a union between man and other supernatural beings. It is perhaps for these reasons that we see giants often featuring in our histories and even ruling men, but, as that same history has shown, they are often lacking in some of the more important aspects of human nature, such as cunning and creativity, as they rely predominantly on their strength and size to overcome obstacles. Despite a difficult relationship with humans, our two races have lived in relative harmony, trading and even cooperating when our goals align, making giants particularly unique among all the creatures in the world in that we occasionally share a cooperative relationship and have even built social hierarchies that include them. It is clear that the giant in many ways possesses the qualities of human being, both noble and malign, and despite being somewhat less civilized, they nevertheless form an intricate part of our world and have certainly earned the respect and fear they deserve. The giant is perhaps one of the oldest mythical creatures in human culture. Though lacking the popularity of creatures such as the dragon or vampire, the giant has been a staple in storytelling since biblical times. The reason for this consistent appearance is in part due to the simplicity of this creature, essentially just a large human being, a concept requiring little modification to the natural world to invent. So it is not surprising then that we find this creature in cultures all over the world, from Asia to Europe, Armenia to Tenochtitlan. We can find the giant in nearly every culture. Perhaps the most famous giants in Western culture are those found in ancient Hindu, Greek, Norse, and Abrahamic mythology, where heroes and beasts alike take on titanic proportions, and the giants themselves are similar to gods. The Nordic Jotun and the Greek giants are perhaps the most similar to one another, in that the giants themselves are born from the same sources as the gods, and both attempt to overthrow the gods. The Hindu Daityas are very similar to the Greek and Norse myths, but were entirely driven by their desire for power, or alternatively their jealousy for their half-god sister race. Abrahamic religions have many groups of giants such as the Anakites and the Emites. These giants are born from a union between man and angel, and are occasionally fallen angels depending on the group. Within these cultures, the giant is often seen as an evil creature, and few giants are as well known as Goliath, an individual of such infamy that his name has come to be an adjective to describe massive size. Other giants are more benign and are less fettered by religious connections. Creatures such as the Japanese Umibozu or the South American Sea Techa are examples of creatures that are quite mysterious and have very unclear or non-existent motivations, with the former creature being a unique and solitary beast. Interestingly, the giant is often portrayed as being a highly social creature. This is possibly due to their similarities with human beings, and we often see them cooperating with human beings in the various media in which they are portrayed. Intelligent and even wise, giants have served as a symbol of power and strength, Returning to Western cultures, the heroes and great peoples in their myths, such as Prometheus or Atlas, are occasionally shown to have been quite generous in stature, and are no different from human beings otherwise. Of course, despite the overt religious connections, the giant has been rather divorced from this aspect of our history. While we still see the religious connection in Norse mythology and specially rendered versions of Christian myths, the giant is now mostly a creature completely divorced from its original conception. Video games, films, and books occasionally present the creature as a stock monster from our collective creature stable, and they are often confused with the man-eating ogre or troll, who are, of course, similar in visage and stature. However, the giant is still seen throughout popular culture in its various forms. Jack and the Beanstalk is a popular children's story featuring giants, and is often retold in modern films and television shows. Giants also often feature in chivalric romance stories, as well as many German folktales, and though these stories have fallen by the wayside in recent years, they are occasionally revived in the form of parodies and reimaginings, though these have occurred less and less in recent times. Despite its decline, the giant is an essential creature in our collective cultures. If history is any guide, it will be with us for ages still to come. It is difficult to discover the initial origin of the giant. Ever since the oldest narrative-capable writing systems were developed in Eurasia, there have been stories of giants and human beings of impressive proportions. As writing propagated across the world, we see soon afterwards stories of giants appearing alongside. It is difficult to be certain as to whether giants were developed by cultures separately or whether they have a single origin point. Initially, we might consider the inspiration for the giant coming from the fossils of ancient creatures, such as dinosaurs, where people in the prehistoric era may have encountered such unique items and have thought them to come from giant human beings. Famously, the skull of the mammoth is suspected to have provided proof of the existence of the Cyclops in ancient Greece, though the efficacy of this claim is doubtful. However, even with modern science, we still sometimes encounter bones that give us pause when considering the origin of the giant. Anthropologists occasionally encounter bones of human beings that are strangely large. For example, Georges Vachier de la Peau discovered various leg bones that, by their scale, would belong to an individual approximately 3 meters tall. It is certainly not outside the realm of possibility to find human beings matching this height, even in our contemporary era. However, these are singular individuals and do not represent the tribes of giants that we find in mythical tales of the giant. As previously mentioned, the giant is perhaps one of the most simplest creatures of which to conceive. All peoples the world over are impressed by massive size and scale. As such, it is not much of a stretch to see how we could envisage this creature ex nihilo across the globe. This conception is perhaps due to the need to create a sense of grandeur and awe in ancient storytelling, something that we still regularly employ today. However, it also serves a metaphorical purpose. Stories such as David and Goliath, for example, finds David, the technical first king of Israel, being able to organize against and beat the Philistines, an ostensibly more powerful civilization. When rendered metaphorically, we are left with a quintessential piece of scripture, small David conquering the giant Goliath with careful strategy. When we combine this with our tendency to embellish stories, the lines between myth and reality are laid bare. And, narratively speaking, it is only natural that gods and heroes are thrice the size of a normal man. Their destinies and actions carry so much more weight. As a consequence, though the inspiration for the giant is not entirely clear, and may perhaps never be illuminated, it is certainly clear that the giant is an ancient creature, and a powerful symbol in our world. The giant is an interesting creature to reify, as it is reasonably possible for the creature to exist, but with some caveats. We occasionally find individuals who grow to an impressive stature, matching the many accounts of giants. Famously, the pro wrestler Andre the Giant was approximately 2.27 meters tall, exceeding the 6 cubits of Goliath of biblical fame. So it is really not outside the realm of possibility for human beings, as we are now, to produce giants. Although, it is perhaps not within reason that selective breeding or isolation could consistently produce giant phenotypes in human beings, for the reasons we shall soon discuss. As we saw with Andre, being so massively tall is not something that the human body is designed to sustain. A very sickly man, Andre suffered from a litany of ailments, including fatigue, diabetes, and blood pressure problems. The latter contributed to his death in 1993, when congestive heart failure took his life. The cause of this gigantism was a disease called acromegaly, which is an excess of human growth hormone brought on from cancer on the pituitary gland. Indeed, technically speaking, gigantism isn't something that is naturally occurring, as it is usually caused by some kind of edema or cancer affecting the pituitary gland. With these ailments in mind, we can see many of the disadvantages that would prevent consistently massive sizes in our species, not to mention that we would essentially be selecting for the production of brain cancer if we use Andre as a model for our giant. However, this is not the only way that gigantism can be brought about. Genetic factors include duplicate genes on the XQ26 chromosome, but most causes of gigantism are idiomatic or cancerous in nature, and usually affect the pituitary gland directly. What's more is that there is usually a confluence of factors that influence the manifestation of gigantism. It is not enough to have certain genes mutated or deactivated. Rather, cancers and edemas need to form at the right time during development as well. This means that breeding for gigantism would be quite difficult to control, further preventing a civilization of giants from coming about. And this is before we consider how long the human breeding cycle is. It is difficult to consciously select breeding across timescales as large as this, never mind by accident. What's more is that there are biomechanical problems associated with a large body. As the body grows, so does the need for blood, which requires a larger heart and puts additional strain on the heart. It is not for nothing that Andre died of heart failure. Turning to the square cube law, we can see that as we double the size of an object, we quadruple the volume. And when applied to the human heart, we could see that it would require a significantly larger amount of energy to pump blood through the body. What's more is that, after a certain size, human muscles become less effective in their performance. As expressed by the following equation for muscle force generation, it is obvious that as the muscle grows in length in relation to the bone to which it is attached, we can see that in areas such as the arms and legs, there comes a point where the muscle begins to take more energy to move itself rather than the creature to which it is attached, thus putting an additional upper limit on the potential size of the human body. Nevertheless, a true giant is still quite possible, and has certainly occurred within living memory. As such, it's not too unreasonable to imagine that the giants of legend were in fact real people. However, whole societies of giants does stretch the limit of what might be possible. Ironically, the human form is the primary limiting factor in this creature's existence. So, with much surprise, we can say that the majority of this creature's myth is in fact true, and although not exactly what we expected, we can say that we do indeed live among giants.